In the heart of a dense, suffocating jungle, a battered young girl runs in blind terror, her face smeared with blood and dirt. Chasing her is Crusher, a dreaded cannibal whose body has been grotesquely twisted and deformed by chemical exposure. He catches her within seconds. His enormous hand engulfs her head, and with one savage twist, a sickening crack splits the air as her skull breaks. Crusher then drags her lifeless body back through the jungle to his hideout. Inside his filthy lair, his older brother Clyde lounges lazily in front of a flickering television, utterly indifferent to the horror unfolding nearby. On the screen plays footage of a previous victim, a young boy the brothers had once kidnapped, tortured, and murdered. Crusher lays the girl's body on a table and begins cutting it apart with methodical precision. The dull thuds of chopping flesh and bone echo through the room, blending disturbingly with the sharp sizzle of onions frying in a pan. Soon, the brothers sit down together and casually eat the cooked flesh as though sharing an ordinary meal. Elsewhere, another crime is in motion. A gang of kidnappers is driving through a remote area with the daughter of a wealthy man locked inside the trunk of their car. Among the group are Sarah and her cousin Josh, who appear uneasy and reluctant participants in the scheme. Shortly after, they stop at a gas station. Josh briefly considers escaping, but he cannot bring himself to abandon Sarah or leave the kidnapped girl behind. At that moment, the local sheriff arrives and strikes up a casual conversation with a man nearby. The kidnappers grow tense. One grips his gun, ready for violence. But Sarah skillfully deflects suspicion, and they manage to leave without drawing attention. Back on the road, a massive deer suddenly leaps into their path. The driver is thrown forward and impaled on the deer's antlers as the wounded animal thrashes wildly. He manages to shoot the deer, but his own injuries are fatal. Without emotion, his own brother Rico shoots him in the head to end his suffering. With their vehicle wrecked and one of their men dead, the group is stranded. When a passing truck slows down to offer help, it seems like a stroke of luck, but greed overrides reason as Rico shoots the truck driver without hesitation. He then moves to finish the wounded man, but Josh intervenes, giving the injured driver just enough time to escape. Hidden nearby, Clyde has witnessed everything. Watching from the shadows, his eyes gleam with predatory excitement, and he rushes back to inform Crusher. Still enraged over a previous victim who had slipped away, now Crusher has new prey to hunt. Meanwhile, the wounded truck driver collapses and dies by the roadside. Later, an elderly man discovers the body and calls the sheriff. Realizing the kidnappers are nearby, the sheriff calls for backup but decides to investigate on his own first, unwilling to risk more lives. Back at the crash site, Josh tries to comfort the kidnapped girl, but Rico loses control and points his gun at Josh. Before he can act, a shot rings out. Clyde has fired from a distance. Rico drops dead instantly, and silence falls over the group. Thinking quickly, Sarah fabricates a desperate story, claiming Rico had kidnapped them all and begging Clyde to save them. But Clyde remains cold and unmoved. When Josh tries to defend the captive girl, Clyde strikes him violently, then forces Sarah and Josh toward the car, deliberately leaving the kidnapped girl behind as bait for Crusher. Moments later, Crusher approaches the helpless girl and knocks her unconscious with a single blow, preparing her for a gruesome fate. Elsewhere, Clyde orders Josh to decapitate the deer. Josh lifts the severed, blood-soaked head and nervously asks, "Aren't you taking the meat too?" Clyde smirks and replies chillingly, "We don't eat animals." The horrifying realization crashes over Sarah and Josh. These men are not hunters, they are cannibals. At that very moment, Crusher drags the unconscious girl back to their lair. Shortly afterward, Clyde comes back, dragging Sarah and Josh with him. Their faces are pale with terror as they're forced to confront Crusher's enormous, deformed figure face to face. At the same time, the sheriff reaches the crash site and finds a dead kidnapper lying on the ground, the deer's body decapitated and streaks of fresh blood leading away into the dense forest. Realizing this trail may be his only chance to find the missing people, he follows it into the wilderness. Inside the brothers' lair, Sarah desperately begs for her life, offering huge amounts of money in exchange for freedom, but Clyde remains completely unmoved. Instead of answering, he calmly pours her a glass of lemon water and hands it to her. Suspicious, Sarah hesitates and firmly says that she doesn't take drinks from strangers. Clyde gives her a faint smile, but then violently grabs her and slams her face onto the table. Forcing her mouth open, he makes her drink. The liquid is laced with a strong anesthetic, and within seconds, her vision spins and her body goes limp as she loses consciousness. Clyde then turns toward Ash, who is still tied up. He rips the mask off her face, exposing her fear. Outside, Crusher knocks Josh unconscious with a heavy blow and then hangs Sarah's unconscious body on a meat hook, suspending her like butchered livestock.
Clyde drags Josh inside and straps him to a chair, taunting him cruelly as he prepares to torture him. Meanwhile, Ash spots a deer antler nearby and begins sawing at the ropes binding her wrists. After a tense struggle, she finally frees herself and grabs a shotgun within reach. Meanwhile, Clyde cauterizes Josh's wounds with fire, laughing as Josh screams in agony. Suddenly, Ash bursts into the room and fires the shotgun, killing Crusher instantly. She quickly frees Josh, and together they handcuff Clyde, keeping him alive so he can lead them back to the road. Exhausted and shaken, they move through the forest. But without warning, Clyde lunges and grabs Josh in a crushing hold. Josh shouts at Ash to shoot, but she hesitates for a split second, and that hesitation costs Josh his life, and Clyde kills him brutally. Snapping out of her shock, Sarah grabs the shotgun and shoots Clyde, finally ending his reign of terror. Consumed by rage, Sarah then turns the gun toward Ash, but before she can pull the trigger, a gunshot echoes through the trees and Sarah drops lifeless to the ground. The sheriff has shot her. He demands answers and forces Ash to guide him back to the house. When they return, dread grips Ash. Crusher's body is gone. She panics and tries to flee, but the sheriff captures her and handcuffs her to a chair. Suddenly, Crusher emerges from the shadows, and in a savage motion, he seizes the sheriff and begins tearing him apart. Inside, Ash struggles frantically against her restraints until she finally breaks free. She grabs a large knife just as Clyde storms in holding a gun. With a desperate scream, she lunges forward and drives the blade into her forehead. Moments later, Crusher charges into the room. Ash fires her remaining bullets to slow him down, then bolts into the forest. Crusher chases her relentlessly until she bursts onto the main road, where flashing police lights illuminate the darkness. She turns and locks eyes with him one last time. His face twists with rage, but instead of attacking, he retreats silently into the shadows. Later that night, police flood the lair. From the edge of the tree line, Crusher watches quietly, his eyes burning with vengeance. His brother is dead, but his hunger for blood remains.